And I think one that I'd like to discuss is, now I don't necessarily agree with this article or this assessment, but Ann Killian wrote a story saying that Jimmy Garoppolo deserved a better farewell than what Kyle Shanahan said at the press conference. And it harkens back to when Eddie D basically told Mark Trestman, the Niners offensive coordinator, who was being criticized heavily at the time, when somebody asked about him at an end of the year presser, Eddie grabbed the mic up on the dais with multiple people there and just said, he's gone. He's gone. Like he was the boogeyman, Mark
Right.
Trestman. Well,
I've seen
Shanahan
this.
was asked about Garoppolo, and hey, could you envision any scenario in which you bring Jimmy back to the team? And instead of giving him his flowers or saying anything nice about him, he says, no, I don't see any scenario of that. And that was it. That was all he said. In other words, goodbye, Garoppolo. And Ann's theory is that, Kyle owed Jimmy more than that. And it's an interesting theory. I think that's a touchy-feely way of looking at things, but she could be right from the standpoint of Jimmy has allies in the room, and those allies include many, many players on the team, but a few that stand out: Kyle Juszczyk,
Kittle.
definitely George Kittle, and there's
Debo
a
likes
few
him a lot.
others.
Bosa.
Bosa. I mean, there's probably a bunch of others, but there's definitely, he has his allies on the team. Are they going to view, Shanahan as callous, especially when you combine that with Jimmy Ward's assessment of their meeting when he went on IG and basically said, "Man, it was cold." I said I wanted to play safety, and he said, "Oh, you're going to ride the bench." And I'll get to that in a minute, and we'll get into this more detail. But do you think in any way the players, I'm in the locker room and the players seem like they're 100% behind Shanahan, but do you think there's any fallout from what he said about Garappolo, where he was just very terse and very short and very cold? Did he owe Garappolo Garappolo did take him, they did go to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl with Jimmy. Did he owe him hey man, Jimmy's been phenomenal. We wish him the best. Did he owe him more than what he gave yesterday at the presser?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that question, right? The first part is the latter half, what you were saying. I agree with Ann Killian, actually. I did not read this article. I didn't even think about it at the time. But when you put it together like that this is probably the last time they're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, yeah, 100%. I think Shanahan was in the wrong. I don't think he realized that in that moment either, that those were going to be his last words on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think if he did, he might have done exactly what Ann Killian talked about. But no matter what you think of Jimmy Garoppolo, and I've been one that, with whatever little following and little I've done this, I've been critical of him. There's been many that have been critical of him. He handled himself with class, and the 49ers had a lot of success with him under center, right? Both of those two things cannot be disputed. And then he did play a part in the culture that the 49ers have built. You can give him credit for it too, right? How unselfish he was, how even keel he is, how egoless he seems to be, right? He was able to laugh off Teddy Bradshaw, making the joke in the NFC Championship game after he threw the ball 8 times, saying like, "Oh, is your arm even tired? I could have gone out there and did what you just did." Terry Bradshaw 70. I think a lot of quarterbacks would have not been able to laugh off that moment, but Garoppolo seems to be that kind of human being where he laughed it off. So in a lot of ways, he, handled himself so well in the time he was here. I agree. He definitely deserved more. Now, to the second part of your question, which was in regards to, what was it?
The second part of the question
was Shanahan right? The effect of this on
right.
the locker room. Exactly.
Yeah, like,
so
are guys going to view Shanahan as being not player friendly? I mean, Amar Singh says players love Kyle. There's no doubt.
No,
and Kyle
Larry,
has relationships with them. But do you think the fact that he just gave him kind of a one sentence sign off, that some of the other guys in the room were like, "Hey, man, if he signs off on Jimmy publicly like that, he probably going to do the same to me. Maybe he's all about him. Maybe I'll be all about me."
So I think I agree with you, but I think as long as he continues to do his job as the play caller and a head coach of this football team at a high level, nobody's going to care. But Larry, the moment they start losing a little bit, right? Things aren't going exactly right. oh, you best believe people are going to start pointing to this kind of stuff and saying this is the problem with Shanahan, right? With Belichick, it was always the Patriot way. He's the smartest guy ever. He's the evil genius. 1 year, right? Last year they made the playoffs. The COVID year, they went 500 with Cam Newton having COVID half the year. And then 1 year, Larry, they have a losing season. They have a couple of ugly losses, compounded with all the special teams errors. And how many different stories from Boston did we get coming out about Belichick, how rigid he is, the Patricia offensive coordinator stuff. So to me, it's very simple, Larry. As long as Shanahan is calling plays at a high level and the 49ers are winning, nobody is going to really be too bothered by this stuff. But the moment the Niners have a 3-14 season, oh, you best believe we're going to hear how Shanahan's difficult. He
Right.
can be terse. He can be, he can be curt. He can be this.
Cold,
he can be that.
he's cold,
Right.
he's
Right.